welcome back to the Freedom Podcast, and we have the man back, Pastor G.
Hello, everyone.
The poddy. How you doing, G? You okay?
Great. Yeah, really great. Back after our fantastic trip to South Africa. Just what a superb country that is. And seeing our church over there at the beginning, all the changes that are going on there. Really, really exciting just to see what is happening and what's in store for 224. Watch that space. I tell you, Cape Town. Come on.
It's very exciting. I know they're getting ready, aren't they, to relaunch the church, and from some of the principles that we've been learning through this last year, where they're going to launch large, they're going to put invitations out to the city, to the community, and really see something amazing there in Cape Town. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, Josh and Meg are doing an absolute superb job. And I just want to shout out to Josh Cook. I mean, it's both of them because they're both on this journey. Is that he's obviously been, had a job as well as pastoring for some time. And this week is his last. He's given his notice, and they're stepping out in faith. And they're saying, do you know what? We're going to believe that God wants to grow this church. So we're going to not wait for that. We're going to step out and say, I'm available. And just as a couple going on that faith journey, I know it's not having all the sort of answers in place, not having all the provision, but they are doing that. So this week, be praying for Josh and Meg because they are stepping into, I think, a whole other level of what God wants to do. And where they're going to be meeting, it's in an area called Newlands in Cape Town. And it's just a fantastic sort of school there, the situation there. It's like God's really opening doors. And we were even in, me and H were in Stellenbosch, which is, I think, a good 45, 50 minutes out, whole different town. And we went out invited out for an evening with some people we didn't really know. We knew the one person, and they said, come round to our house. So it was like a little bit like a small group, but we met these people, business people, et cetera, and we were chatting away. And as we were talking, one of them said, I know someone in Cape Town who's like going to this, church that's moving into Newlands. We said, that's our church. And it's just so amazing how the millions of people you've got there. And then we just happen to be in this random party where they're saying, her daughter's going along excited about what's happening and this whole new shift. And we ended up being able to share the vision just through this random dinner party outside of Cape Town. And you can just see how God is connecting the dots. That's amazing, Josh, isn't it? How God just connects those dots and you get those divine connections. And, as you take steps forward, amazing, just make yourself available, how God he steps in. He says, oh, I've already been here before you. And there's purpose in this and there's lives behind it. So I think there's just going to come something great from those connections we made.
Come on, there's great destiny and purpose over Josh and Meg, the pastors there. And I'm so excited to see what unfolds in Cape Town, what God's going to do. It's so exciting. I think they're launching in February. And Josh, and they had a miraculous thing with their venue. Maybe we'll get to tell that on the podcast one day and talk about what's happening there. But it really is so, there's a lot of faith, isn't there, for what God's going to do in Cape Town. But I was thinking about the fact that Josh came into our church when we were meeting in Leinster in our little market town. I was 17, I think. Josh was 10 years old. And I just kind of took it on myself to take him round to just show him we were meeting in a sports centre at the time. And the thing Josh was most excited about our church at that time was the vending machine. We had a vending machine at church, and that was cool. And it wasn't even our vending machine, it was the sports centres. But to see this young lad come in, and I remember we were on our way to a mission trip in Brazil in a couple of years later, and Josh had a real powerful encounter with the Holy Spirit and just got set on fire for God at just 12 years old. And to see him now, age 30, all these years later, to be going and doing this in Cape Town, man, it's an amazing journey that he's been on to prepare him for this. and Meg
And the
too.
same for
But
Meg.
this is the
Meg came in
time.
as a teenager
Yeah.
into our church in
15,
Hereford.
16, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the great privileges that we've had is seeing these, kids
Yeah.
coming in, meeting God. That's
Yeah.
why, in Freedom, we have such a passion for our young
We
people.
do.
We don't think, oh, that 10-year-old boy, he's we've got to wait some years before we can take him seriously. No, let's
Yeah.
take our kids serious right now, because you don't know the potential in them. And then seeing the steps they make and getting involved in worship, in leadership. But think about, like Josh, it's almost 20 years now, 2 decades of like faithfulness, pursuing God. I don't know how many different countries he's been to, but quite a few, for the kingdom. And they're just poised at this point. I think
So
they've both
exciting.
just turned 30 years old. And there's just, I don't know, it just feels like there's something about, hey, this next season, next chapter, I'm telling you, you've seen nothing yet. You wait. And that faithfulness and the steps of faith they've made that have cost them, they're going to see incredible fruit. This year is going to be an incredible year for them.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I want to talk about for us today is taking steps of courage where we might feel intimidated or we're putting something at risk. And I look at Josh and Meg, they stepped into the church during COVID, so they moved during that time. It was very challenging. They took the church on and they started then to meet, and they had some things really set up for them. They already had an established community. They had a building. They've got fantastic space in an area of Cape Town. And as we started to talk about, because we were talking about this earlier this year, and saying, I believe that there's more. God's going to do more through you guys than you've seen this far. There's actually, we need to believe for more and enlarge our vision. One of the things that they've had to do for that is take some steps of courage in the midst of getting to that vision. So, for example, they've said, right, we're going to leave our venue, which has been set up for them. They had a great rent on it. It's
comfortable.
It's comfortable. It's convenient for them, and they've had to say, we're going to step out of that and get us rent another venue. And one of the most difficult things, and I know this from some friends who are pastors in Cape Town from other churches, one of the most difficult things to do in Cape Town is to get a venue, because there's a number of reasons behind that, but it's very challenging to find a space for a church. And so they had to make those steps. Josh is going to be leaving his job. He was working full-time or virtually full-time for another organization, another charity. He's withdrawing from that to create more capacity to do this. And again, what if nobody turns up? What if we can't sustain that? But he's decided to take those steps. But right now, and I always think of this, G, where you've got the parable of the talents, where the guy with 5 talents, you love the end. Very quickly, he said he invested the 5 talents and he had 10. For a minute there, he had 0 talents. He had the 5 and it went to 0. Then it went to 10, because you've got to let go of what you have to be able to multiply it. And that's the bit that Josh and Meg are entering right now. It's like, right, the talents, they're on the table. God, you do with it what you will. But when we look ahead to this new year, and I almost think about it like a mountainscape, especially as we're kind of talking about Cape Town, and looking at those mountains thinking, God's calling me to climb some things, but I don't know. I'm feeling intimidated, and we've looked at a few mountains together, haven't we?
Yeah.
When we've climbed them together, we've done some hikes, and there can be some things sometimes where it's like that mountain, it's like looming over me, and when it's almost intimidating. It's feels so large. It's like, where do I start? How do I get up there? And I think that as you look ahead to your life, as you're listening to this and you think about that mountainscape of your 2024, you're looking ahead to what maybe God's calling you to, or things that you're going to step into, or dreams that are in your heart. Those things can seem intimidating. And what do you do with that fear, or what do you do with that intimidation? Do you step into overcoming it and taking courage? Do you let those things cause you? Sometimes you shouldn't be on the mountaintop, and you need to like get fit and healthy before you start stepping up there.
Yeah, right.
So I thought it would be great for us to talk about today, G. What are those things for us where we look to the mountains, we look to those things that are in front of us, and we know, man, that's going to take something to get up there. How do we do that? How do we like conjure up that courage, that ability to overcome?
Yeah, first of all, I want to refer perhaps to this by calling it climbers and campers. And there's something in every one of us that wants to camp out when we should be climbing.
Wow.
And even when we've
Love that.
been climbing, and maybe this 2023 has been a tough year, and we've been climbing, we've been pushing through, and it's been challenging, and maybe there's a little bit of tiredness, and we're, often you approach the end of the year, and talking to someone in South Africa who was like, I'm done. I just can't keep going like this. And there were reasons around that, but it was like, no, you're not done. There's more. There's more. God's got more for you. And I think it's very easy to camp. It's like, I'm going to now camp. And there's this, we tend to revert back to, hey, I want to settle. It's easier to manage what you know rather than what is unknown. And when you look up at that mountain, that potential of 2024 that's coming, it can be intimidating, because first, you don't perhaps know what that looks like. There's the unknown that causes us to camp.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm safer here in my canvas tent, but we weren't born to settle. We were born to actually go and pioneer.
It's really good.
And I don't mean just pioneer church. I mean, go and pioneer the things of God, go and pioneer vision for our family, pioneer vision for our lives, the potential, the purpose that's within us. But that requires moving. And that's what you're referring to with Josh and Meg is, yeah, we can settle. They're doing a great job. No one was saying you're doing a bad job, but they're like, we haven't been called to camp here. We've had a season here, and that's been good, the last few years. But there's something in us that says it's time to climb. And I think that's what God wants to perhaps just challenge some people right now, where you've perhaps felt a little bit, end of the year, there's a bit of lethargy sometimes, a little bit, perhaps I didn't end up where I wanted to be. Perhaps you thought you'd be higher up the mountain than where you are, and you've stopped halfway. But, even after we take a little bit of rest, don't settle. There's danger in settling. I think I've always been aware that you can easily convince yourself it's okay to settle. But before you know it, it's more than a month. It's 6 months. 6 months turns to a year. And it's like, how did I get stuck here? This is how we get stuck.
Yeah,
and it's even harder then to get up and move, because, some of the hikes that we've done, and if we've been away and we've actually been out overnight, and you're up a mountain, when you've been out all day and you stop, and the aches, pains, the blisters, it's tough getting going, isn't it, Josh, again?
It is.
To get started again and to push through. And I think God's challenging perhaps us, just to have the posture of saying, God, let me not be intimidated by the mountain, the challenge that's ahead. But with the challenge of the mountain, I think what I've always encouraged myself with, it's all around perspective. Something about mountains. Mountains can be intimidating, but when you climb a mountain, it's amazing how if you just take one step at a time, you look back and you think, wow, I've come quite a way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm speaking to people now who it feels like you haven't come that far. But if you just take a look back and say,
true.
I've actually come quite a way. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was at the beginning of 2023. Come on, let's just take stock. Let's get fresh perspective, and let's go forward from here.
It's really good. And I think even as we talk about that mountainscape, and we talk about looking at things that are intimidating, moving out from that place of comfort, moving out from the canvas and the camping, it reminded me, especially as we're talking about Cape Town, that whole move that you made, that you led our church through, to go from our miracle provision when we were in our small church in Leinster, and we had a fantastic venue that was a miracle provision, wasn't it? And if you've not read the Firestarters, but you can hear all about it, where we had this breakthrough miracle provision of this building called Brook Hall. but God started speaking to you about what's next, the next mountain, right?
Yeah, so Brook Hall was really a mountain for us. It was the provision of our first building that we owned, and that was a huge, massive thing. The miracle. It was the, really, it was. We were astounded, and at that time, for the coming years, it caused us to grow, to create impact in our town. We saw incredible things happening. But there came a point, and we were actually got to a point that we were the most comfortable we'd ever been. Financially, we were like in a good, healthy position. We'd renovated. We had different ministries firing. We were, I think, one of the largest sort of churches in the town at that point. And it was like, yeah, we're doing well. And I remember then God saying, really, is this the extent of the mountain you wish to climb? Because this is like a molehill. This is like a sandcastle.
Wow.
And I have so much more. And he said, it's about perspective. You want to settle? Do you want to settle here? You could be here for the next 20 years if you want. And I had this, it suddenly went from being comfortable to this almost like a disgust that I could lose the potential that God had. And I didn't, at that point, I didn't have this plan of we're going to go to the world planting churches. It was literally up the road. We might plant a church maybe one day. It was perhaps the vision was small, but I had to climb the mountain.
Right.
And in fact, do you know what the funny thing was? Perhaps I'll explain this is this market town. It's half an hour from our main city called Hereford. And it's actually separated by a hill. And this this hill is you have to go over the hill to get to sort of cross that almost boundary point. And I remember God saying, it's time for you to move. I'm going to move you over the hill. And that's what basically God was preparing us, was get up, pack your tents, get ready to go on the journey. And it took us about 3 years. But the first thing God said is, don't get stuck. So do you know what I did? I put the building up for sale. It was like, we're going to sell the building. And I remember everyone saying, but where are we going to go? This is our home now. We got ministries. It was comfortable. We all knew, everyone knew their little place and their corner and their seats. And God said, sell the building. He said, trust me on the journey. I'm not giving you answers of where I'm taking you. I just want you to trust me. I said, well, what am I going to tell people? Leave that to me. It's all part of the disturbance. And God said, create a disturbance. And it's so interesting because God will allow disturbances in our life, again, because he's more interested in our movement rather than us being comfortable. And so I put it up in the back of my head, because this building was something like 1500s. It was built in 1500s. I mean, for you guys in America, that is just like ancient. But it was a very unique building, and been a church for many years. And everyone told me it would take ages to sell, perhaps like a year.
Yeah.
So I thought, great, this is our human thinking. All the advice, ages to sell. And I was thinking, in that time, I've got 12 months to work out what's next. Where are we going to move our church? And there was only about 70 of us, but it's like, where are we going to move to? What's the next plan? I've got time. And what happened is we sold it in 4 weeks. And that caused issues with some people. I had people that were really upset, and it was uncomfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable stepping out of your tent and going up the mountain. It's not always the thing of like, do you know what? Everyone's got peace about this, and we're all in agreement, and we're all happy, because I couldn't say to people, this is what it looks like. This is what the mountain's going to be like. This is where we're going to go. But there was this unsettling and a disturbance of what was about to take place.
Come on. Absolutely amazing. And I love that picture of having to let go of something that you don't yet know what the next thing is. And I think of all of our people listening to this, where you are thinking about going from this mountaintop to the next. And so sometimes it's that, man, I've conquered something. I've walked from something this year, and now I've got to go back down again to get up to the next one. And I think that sometimes it's like, do we have that within us? I remember we went to Scotland a few years ago, and we did 2 days of mountain walking, and we did a huge day of really tough mountain range. And we like to walk, don't we, from like when you wake up to like the sun's gone down. So it's like the sun's up, the sun's down. We've walked every single. We literally drive, and the sun's still down. And by the time we get there, the sun's coming up, and then we walk
And the
all day.
Highlands are fantastic.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing up there. Absolutely love it. Highly recommend it. But I remember the second day, we were like, right, we're going to do another big day again. And everyone was creaking. It's like could hardly get the legs out of the bed. You start standing, and then everyone gets your breakfast sorted, and you get dressed again. You get those boots back on. They've hopefully dried out fully. And we then arrive. We drive to the mountain base in the dark, and then the sun starts coming up, and you can see this mountain. And you're thinking, how on earth are my legs of stone going to get me up there? This is not looking good. I don't feel good. And I think that feeling that we can have, especially maybe when you've been through something, that you've been tested, you've been stretched, you've got to find that courage within you to go again. And the great thing is God has deposited it there. It's there and it's available. Yeah. And I think you have to choose what you listen to, what you give voice to within your spirit. What are you speaking out? If you because I could tell you all day, I don't feel like it. I can't do it. I'm not up for it. But actually, we kept going, and it was incredibly difficult. But we got to that mountaintop, and we conquered it. We overcame it. I remember seeing the dark cloud that was over the top of the mountain. It's like, we've got to go into that, but we're going to go in it together. And I think even that's something, is that if I was by myself that day, I don't think I would have gone forward. I think I would have said, do you know what, I'm going to do a bit and then I'll go back to the car. But we were together, a whole bunch of us, and we kept plowing on. And I think that is such a reflection of the nature of the church, where we can conquer these things together. We can encourage you to keep going in the face of the mountain, that you've got more strength in you than you know, that there is courage in you more than you know. And it's like, take another step. You can do this. We'll be with you. Let me take your bag for a bit. And that's the power of community. We're not called to conquer these things alone. It's actually incredibly difficult to do that. But when you're in it together, get some people alongside you that are going to be praying for you, speaking out faith. You can do things that will surprise you.
Yeah, it's the power of partnership and purpose. You know, when you get those two elements coming together, we got a partner. That's how you sort of conquer those things. You got a partner. That's why don't go alone. Don't be isolated. You're really going to be in danger if you're trying to, I don't know, overcome that and you're doing it alone. You need others. You really do. And I remember on that second day, Josh, my knee I had issues with my knee.
Gosh, that was terrible.
And it was like it felt like my bone was scraping together. And it started pretty much as we were going up, and looking at it, and I was thinking, I'm in so much pain. I don't know if I can do this, but there was that thing in me. I said, I don't want to go back. I want to keep going. But the encouragement that I had from guys around me, you know, one of them would drop back and say, hey, you okay? Come on, and just helping, pushing through. Again, I couldn't have done that without those guys. Just being in that band, being in a band of brothers, being there to go and see the amazing views. But it was painful, and you need that. But this whole thing of purpose, partnership, great, but purpose is the driver. This is what you said, Josh. There is far more in you. You can do far more than you realize. It's a natural thing. People think, I can't do that. Yes, you can. There is so much that we are capable of. But there's something even beyond that natural ability. There is also it is a divine calling, a purpose that has been placed within you by God. And all the time, purpose is calling you up the mountain all the time. Purpose. When you
Yeah.
think, do you know what, I'm done, I got an injury, it's like purpose. You have a sleep in the tent for a while, but you wake up and it's like purpose is calling me. Purpose is on the other side. Purpose is saying, don't stop, don't give up. This thing that we're designed for purpose, and it's in every one of us as human beings. Not one of us has been designed by God without purpose, and that purpose is shouting at us saying, come on, there's more in you, there's more, come up to this new vista. And sometimes when you're on that track and you just get to a certain point where you're able to see things, maybe, and even for us, the cloud cleared at certain points, and suddenly, and up on the Isle of Skye, you could see over to the sea. And it was like,
Incredible.
wow, just take a look at where we've come. And we might only be halfway up, but there's something about it in your heart saying, come on, there's purpose in this. And God is pushing you forward. It's fine to take the rest. Time is great to have like time out at points, just like us we come back from South Africa, we had some time just to rest, prepare, ready for what's coming to 24. And we've come back saying, come on, got plans. We're ready to get the boots on, ready to ascend the new mountain that God has. And I believe that's for every one of us. And if you got stuck, purpose is calling out to you right now for 224. There is like a rumbling. There's a disturbance. Don't settle. There's more. Don't descend. You've come this far.
Yeah.
Push through, because God has great purpose.
When I think about climbing mountains, G, and having the courage to keep going and taking another step, one of the things that comes to my mind is the false summits, where you see the top and you think, wow, we're almost there. And then you get up to that summit and you realize that actually it was hiding the summit behind it. And then you get a true glimpse of where you're heading. And that can be a little bit dispiriting. But I think, again, there's a truth in there for us in that when we are going through something and we've stretched ourselves and we think, I'm over the finish line, and actually there's more to go. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep believing. I think that there's almost a even deeper thing that happens in that moment, because you've actually got to dig down deeper to go again after you think you've made it, after you think you've got there. And I just think about, for us embarking on those journeys for this coming year, and thinking about, you may think you know how that route's going to look.
Yep.
But sometimes we can think we've made it, but we need to keep stretching ourselves to go that little bit further. We need to press on. We need to go a little bit harder and go after what God has for us.
Yeah, and so much of that is around our expectations. So you might, from your viewpoint, from being, when you're down and you're looking up, you can often see those false peaks and you think, just got to push through to there. And you get there thinking it's the place. And as you said, when you get there, you realize, man, I've got 7 more peaks to go. It really is. And that expectation, it ends up in discouragement. And it's so true, Josh, that as we journey through, how often do we think, if I just push through this last bit, I've arrived? And they go, oh, no, you haven't arrived. This is just part of the journey. You're on the journey. And going back to the story of Brook Hall, when we sold, God said, sell the building, causing disturbance. There was an excitement in me and a fear of being comfortable. So we unsettled things. We sold the building, we moved, and we ended up moving into that leisure center. It was the only place we could get. I was expecting, for us, that was like a mountain, to sell the building, sell the miracle. We're going to put ourselves, God's on the move, right? And he was on the move. But my expectation was, let's get up to this mountain, like this point of selling, doing it, and we'll shift then into God's purpose and promise. But we weren't going straight into the purpose promise. We had 3 years in a leisure center where before we moved over the hill into the city of Hereford and became Freedom Church. And so selling the building was only a process of the journey, and selling it wasn't almost like we got to the peak. And I remember thinking, God, come on, I'm ready to move. I want to get to the peak now.
Yeah.
But he said, no, you've got 3 years of waiting time.
Wow.
And the 3 years, but God had purpose in the waiting time, because what he was then doing was he was preparing and changing us. And this is where he taught us about being changelings. You know, he almost like was renovating our thinking, getting ready to move over the hill into the new city of Hereford, which was the beginning of what God was about to do. So I just want to share that, because often we want to get up the mountain quick, but often you've got different peaks that have purpose within them, and every station has God's doing something. Where I thought we would move from this straight into God's next purpose, it was actually a holding time where he renewed our minds and began preparing us for what was to come.
Absolutely brilliant.
So make the most of every part of that.
I love that. That's so good, G. And I think about, for those of us that are looking ahead to this year and we're thinking about, man, I feel a bit intimidated about what God's called me to, or I feel concerned, maybe anxious, you know, whatever it might be, that can cause us to be static and not move forward and not take steps, and to access the courage within us to try and call out that power, because it's there, the same power. With believe in Jesus, the same power that rose Christ from the grave, lives within you. That we need to access that power. And so to do that, I think we've covered a couple of things this today, and we've talked about how the voices around you, people around you, if you've got people who are speaking faith, cheering you on, who are going to go with you on the journey, you can go much further. It's going to set you up to be able to conquer, to be able to get to access that courage. I think looking at your expectations about what you're expecting, I think that's huge as well. But also what you speak out to access that courage. What are you saying over yourself? What are you saying over that mountain? I can't do it. I'm intimidated. I'm overwhelmed. Or do you start to say, I can just take a step? You know, all of these things. Is there anything else for you, G, that as we finish up today, about anything else that comes to mind about accessing that courage within?
You touched on this about the voices and the people around you, because when I journeyed that point of selling the building, stepping out, and I can tell you other stories that came after that, where God said, do this. And then I had a lot of voices saying to me, it's the wrong thing. It's dangerous. It's don't go up that mountain. There could be an accident. You know, so I had lots of those voices, and I had to learn to, as you said, switch off from listening to those voices, because often there's more of those voices than the ones that say, come on, we can actually do this. And I identified the people around me, like when we went up the mountain with in that group of men who were all saying, we've got one objective, we're going to make it to the top. And I think you can choose. It's very important that you choose what you listen to. Who has your ear? Do you know what I mean? It's like there's just something about who is speaking, who you allowing to speak into you. It's amazing how that doubt, discouragement comes in. But when you're around people saying, come on, we courage, when they're speaking encouragement is a powerful thing. I even had a couple of people said, do you know what? I don't perhaps understand the decisions that you're making, but I'm with you. And that, when people are like, I'm with you, and I believe that God is speaking to us. And even if we don't make it, it's the right thing to do. Yeah. How about that? I mean, that's something. It's like, even if we don't quite get there, if we're going to go on a 100-mile hike over the next 3 days, and it's like we get to, I don't know, mile 87, and it's like, do you know what? We're done. Hey, you went there, you did it. It's like, I think sometimes we want guaranteed success. And what I would say is, I haven't always had guaranteed success when I've stepped out. I think we want to almost make sure that we don't fail. But every time I haven't quite made it, God is in it.
That's right.
He's saying, come on, I'm going to speak to you here. I'm going to show you that you need me more. And I'm going to show you that this was just a practice for what's to come. Guys, we sometimes take the failure of stepping out and just see it as, I'm not equipped to do that. I'm not really a mountain person. I'm more of a valley settle person. And so I want to bring that point, that it's very important that you don't be fearful of failure. It's all part of the way we learn and the way we go forward. And that's what I've done, Josh, over the years, I think, is I feel intimidated. So I've had these situations that are very intimidating, that would keep you awake at night. And I've almost learned to say, do you know what, but I'm not going to be fearful of failing. It's very different. And so with that, I'm going to encourage myself. And even if I fail, God, you're in it.
Yeah.
You've gone before me. You're actually going to use it. And if you can get that in your heart, you will go into 224, whatever God is saying. Do you know what? I'm not going to fear failure. And when I feel that intimidation at points, I now recognize it quite quick. And I don't think about it a lot. I almost sort of go straight into it. And, some of the climbs that we've done where you have a ridge that looks pretty, I mean, we were up in Scotland where it all froze and the snow, and it was crazy. We had a little ledge we were going around that was frozen. There was a big drop to the one side.
Terrifying.
And you start thinking about it for long, it freezes you. But once you sort of just take a step at a time, take a step with caution, keep moving, and go forward. I think there's just something that God uses.
Do you know what?
Way.
Before you were saying that, the picture I've had in my mind these last few minutes has been when we went up a mountain in North Wales together, and there was one of my brothers was there as well, and we were going over a knife ridge, which. Because I think sometimes like you go to mountains, you got beautiful mountain tops, you got the valley. It's like it sounds really picturesque. Mountains are also dangerous places. There's a reason that people don't live up there. And I remember going up when we were teenagers, and we were going over this knife ridge. Which a knife ridge is, if you don't know, is that you can on the left and the right you can fall. There's a sheer drop. And we were climbing over this.
Let's hope H isn't listening to this, Josh. The amount of times we got in trouble. You're not taking those boys up there. I said, is it safe? Yes, it's fine.
Yes, it's fine. It's not dangerous at all. And I remember seeing my brother's face, and I don't think I've ever seen him as white as that. He was as white as a sheet, and obviously feeling it. And I was thinking about how, you were our father and you were taking us up
reckless
in this scary moment. And we were in this place of, where it was scary.
You guys were quite young, weren't you? I think.
Yeah, I think we were 15, 16, 17, something like that. It wasn't too young. And I think, but we were in this thing of almost intimidation. But you led us up there. And I actually think that is true to what God does as well, is that God does bring us into some moments to say, we're gonna just walk on this paved roadway up to the top of the mountain. Or I'm just gonna, it's like, you're gonna crawl over your hands and knees over this ridge. And even, I don't know if there was anything for you as a father of like, right, I'm going to take you through this to stretch you, to challenge you. What do you think is almost happening in that happens to provoke something within us?
You have got those mountains with the pathways. They lay the stone down, and you've got, this is the route, go up the route here. And it's almost safer, can still be tough, but it's like, this is the prescribed route. I think what I try to do with you boys was almost like, let's adventure off the route. Anyone can go up a path, and the view that you get and the experience is very different, because that's where most people go. And I think what I was trying to expose you boys to was the adventure lies off the path. The challenge is off the path. If you want to see things other people haven't seen, it's off the path. And I think this applies to us as believers, and I've seen this with all of you. I think all of you have stepped out, you've traveled around the world, done like amazing things in faith. Well, all those are mountains, and in a way, you haven't lived. You haven't lived a normal life. You're not living normal lives now. Any of you, you're like, it's like we're off the path, but we're following the ridge. We're following where God is leading us. And I think that's what we have with big choices as we look at 224. You can either stay on the path or you can go off the path, and you can go into the adventure and the purpose that God has. But with it, there is risk. There's an element of danger, but keep your eyes on your Father.
That's
keep
good.
your eyes going ahead. Listen to the instruction, because all the time I was just like, hey, do this. Make sure you got 3 points of connection. Get down and crawl this bit. It's like, keep your eyes, keep your ears listening to the Father. But you will see things and go places that others will not go. And I think it's it's almost around the normal and the extraordinary. And you can live normally and safe, or you can live, and faith there's something about it that is dangerous. That's the life that we've been called to live. There's a danger to it. There's a risk of failure. But heck, when you do it and you get over the other side, it's like, we did that.
Yeah.
We conquered that. We saw things from a certain point no one else saw, but there was a cost to it. And so I just want to encourage people that are listening, as you enter into this year, I just feel like God is calling some of you to almost to get off the track. Don't keep on the safe track. Maybe it's like, what's your mountain that you need to climb? What is the challenge that God's laying before you in faith, saying, I want to grow your faith? Are you ready? Have you got your courage intact? Are you ready to sort of say, come on, Lord,
use it.
I want to see a new vista. It comes with a cost of following, but listen to your Father. He won't put you through more than you're able, but there's actually more in you than you think you have.
Yeah.
And the courage that he's placed in you, he'll ignite it as you take one step after another. Don't wait to feel that at the bottom of the mountain. Just start saying, Lord, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you.
Yeah, it's really good. When I think about that picture of being on that ridge, and I can look down to my left, I can look down to my right, there's a drop either side, or I can look ahead and I can see you go before me, leading the way, showing it was overcome.
Come on.
Listening
picture
to your voice. And I think that for all of us, even that picture of Peter getting out of the boat, he's not just getting out by himself in the storm. Jesus is there. Yeah. And Jesus is calling him, and he's walking, and he's got to fix his eyes on Jesus. And I think about that for us going up these mountains. You don't have to do it alone. That God is gone before you, and he's calling you. He'll go with you. He'll go ahead of you. The whole nature of this call of our faith is to follow Jesus, not to try and find our way by ourselves, to follow him, that he goes with us. And so, yeah.
One of the big things when we're up there on some of those high mountains, you've got a lot of cloud. Cloud can come in very quick. One of the important things is don't separate yourself. Don't create gaps between yourself. So if there's a few of you, don't lose someone towards the back. Don't lose the lead. As you said, Josh, I think it's just about stay close. Stay close to Jesus. Stay close to your Father. Don't you lag back, because when a cloud comes, it's like, I haven't got visual. Wow. That's when we get lost.
Brilliant.
Stay close for all that he has this year.
That's right. That's so good. And I think if you're going to take on those things ahead of you, that's a brilliant thing to finish on. You've got to stay close to the Father, to his voice, to his word, his promise, his presence. You want to take something on, you want to step out in faith, you better hold on to him, stay close to him, and you will conquer, you'll overcome.
Crucial.
Gee, what a pleasure to have you back. This has been so good. I've absolutely loved this today, and thank you so much. I think it's going to give people a lot
Josh.
to think
Exciting
on.
For the end of this year and everything that's coming.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks so much, and we'll be back next week for another episode.